Las Vegas, and welcome to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Tuesday night. Glad to be representing EOG. The three letters stand for Ion Gaming. EOG.com, a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. In studio with me this evening, Alan Dinkinson and WAZ, both are Las Vegas-based professional sports bettors. Dink, of course, the hockey devotee. WAZ handles all sports. He loves to follow football, basketball, baseball, and he's been on a nice run in Major League Baseball. We'll talk to WAZ about the biggest story of the night. The Baltimore Orioles and Washington Nationals, teams from the same metro area, clinching division titles. The Orioles, their first division title since 1997. The Nats, their second division title in the past 3 years. Dink, thanks for recruiting WAZ to the program tonight.
You have to give him $20 when we're done.
You treated us to dinner, Dink, and picked up I thank you for picking up the tab.
You got me 10 customers to my wrestling show. Thank you for doing that.
Let's talk about the wrestling. We'll get it out of the way.
Not wrestling, it's wrestling.
We'll get it out of the way at the start of the show.
I thought we were doing the whole show on wrestling.
We did that last week.
Oh, okay.
In fact, some of our listeners disappointed that we devoted as much time.
Let's just skip it. We didn't do a good house. Everybody liked the show. John, did you like the show?
Wonderful presentation.
WAZ, did you like the show?
Oh, the show was great. I love the fact they had 8 women wrestlers there that squared off, and it was great, entertaining. I'll do it again if you have another show.
We're done talking about the show. Let's go on to sports.
Hustle Double, an EOG contributor who I respect. He wanted to hear a recap of the program. It was priced right, Dink, for $20. That was good value.
The very proficient wrestlers, and I think 6 of the girls are in the upper echelon of the wrestlers, and the 6 guys are, PWG worthy talent, which is pretty good, including the PWG champ.
There's a $20 rule in marketing and promotions. They say you should never ask somebody to break a 20. Don't price something at 25 or 29. Price it at 20. That I know in the casino marketing business they often talk about it. It
didn't really work for my my price at 25. I think I wouldn't have got any less people because I knew about everybody there.
Family and friends.
Yes.
But it was fun. It was a good night. And
I do think most people who came, even my wife who hates wrestling, enjoyed that show a bit, and stayed to the end and was actually into it.
Our friend Bomsey was there, Factorial. How about your ring announcer? He's well-known at TVG.
Gino Bacola from TVG, a regular, host on a very popular station for gambling.
Bill O'Brien.
There was a tie. There was a gambling wrestling tie.
Bill O'Brien enjoyed the show, so too did Ron Miller. I know Doug and Daryl were both there, so it was a fun night, and we'll move on.
We had an injury.
We did. Bomsey took a chair to the knee, and he wasn't pleased when a wrestler threw a chair out in the crowd. So
it's a real show. We have to be prepared. It's not like sports betting. This is really dangerous.
Dink, did you win money on Saturday? I'm hoping that you offset some of your losses in the wrestling promotion.
Didn't. Well, it depends how you look at it. My own betting was small, but the overall day was good. I had the things I partner up with some people. They happen to have a good Saturday.
How about Sunday?
I think the whole board. I think I ended up winning almost the same way, more from other people. Although the Wong teasers did bad, and that kind of hurt me. They had a really bad day. Mm-hmm. Probably the worst day I've had with them since 2 years ago. I think we didn't have a week like that last year at all.
Which teams fit the Wong teaser definition?
I'm trying to think of which teams lost.
The Saints.
Were a bunch. Yeah, but that was the big. They're more of the plus guys. I don't want to give away too much either. They're more plus. The plus 9s and plus 8.5s and are the best of what they do. And I think I'm trying to remember which teams lost. I think the Giants were plus in the early part of the week, and that's when they bet them, which was really a steal, but that didn't work. And Pittsburgh lost the Thursday night game, which was bad. There's another team that lost plus 9. There were a lot of losers. I don't think they won any of them.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with both Dink and WAZ. WAZ has been on the program before. He's played to rave reviews. 35-year-old sports bettor here in Las Vegas that is doing well this baseball season. He's done well since he arrived here in Las Vegas 4 years ago. WAZ, give us some of the secrets to your success. I know you don't want to give away the store, but you've told us on past shows You're a dedicated worker. You wake up in the morning, stay up late at night. You put in a lot of hours.
Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of it's just hard work, staying ahead of the game. I like to work at least a day in advance, if not more. I do a lot of reading, and I value other people's opinions as well, as far as not sports bettor opinions, but more so, what do beat writers think about teams? What do analysts think in some regards about teams? People follow the teams closely. And I use a lot of math. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a pure math modeler or math guy 100%, but I probably use more math than 90% of people out there, and I think that contributes a lot to my winning. I try to be more objective and not use as many subjective factors as a lot of people use. I think that helps me in a lot of ways.
What is the extent of your mathematics background?
I was an accounting and finance guy in college. And
at the University of Illinois.
University of Illinois. And then after that, I did accounting work in public accounting and corporate work as well for almost 10 years. So I used a lot of financial models. So I was able to carry over a lot of that into sports betting on the side before I came out here to do it for a living. So, and then once I got here, I just started tweaking things more and spending more time with it and getting my hands on databases and just tweaking things and trying things here and there. A lot of trial and error. I mean, I probably spent hundreds of hours on things that didn't work and tinkering with things that just went to a dead end and nowhere. But I think you kind of have to do that to kind of get to the right answer a lot of times. So I kind of found a happy medium between that and then watching games, reading about games, and kind of putting it all together into the equation.
Was the move to Las Vegas a must? Did that help you when you decided 4 years ago to come to Las Vegas, or could you have gambled where you were at?
No, I think being here is a big part of it. Talking to other gamblers, learning from other people, being focused and being in the atmosphere. It's hard to explain, but I think just being here and being in the casinos and in the action, I feel like you're more in tune with things from the gambling perspective. And I've learned a lot from people here. I mean, I've met a lot of people first few years being out here. And
for example?
Well, Dink right here. I mean, I've learned things from Dink, and I haven't even known him that long. But
instructive error.
Yes, you learn by other
some
people's
hockey things
mistakes.
from Dink, because I'm not as big into hockey as I am in other sports. So he's taught me a few things about hockey and just more about, I think, more gambling, not per se handicapping, but the value of line shopping and where you can bet this kind of bet, where you can find this there, what casinos offer certain things, and just you talk to people, you learn things, and you kind of add it to your repertoire, and you become a better gambler. And I think a lot of people focus on handicapping so much, but being a gambler, I think, is almost as important as being a good handicapper. You really need that gambling sense.
I think it's actually more important because you're the elite of gamblers because you quantify things really well. But for people who can't do that, if they're destructive in their gambling tendencies, they have no shot. If you're an average handicapper, a lot of people know the game, but they don't know how to equate it to a number. And then, they'll get fooled a lot by a team that looks really good. And the numbers may say they're not as good as they look, but they won't bet against them. But when they start chasing and doing dangerous things and trying to get out for the week, get out for the day, get out for the month, get out for the season, that could be a disaster. And you have to avoid the disaster factors in betting. But I have a question about what we were talking about. You found the stat that you wanted to try. You thought it was a good stat and you were going to quantify it and you thought it would be important to your gambling. And then you say, I found out it was a dead end. How do you know when to pull the plug for sure? How long does it take? When something you think will work doesn't work, how do you know you've given it the right amount of time?
That's a really good question. I guess it, first of all, depends on what it is. It's kind of case by case, but you develop a lot of theories in your head and you think, okay, I think this may work. And what I do is I go back and back test it, go back so many years and say, well, if I had applied it going back 5 years ago all the way up till today, would it have made me money or not? And kind of see a trend on that over time and say, okay, my theory is right or wrong. That's a very simple version of it. There's a little bit more to it than that because there's a lot of other variables. So if you can isolate one thing, if it's very simple and it's easy to go back and test, I can do that. I have the ability to do that with the data I have. But a lot of times it's not that easy. It's a combination of things. The markets are constantly changing, so you may have something that worked 5 years ago that doesn't work anymore.
The rules change in sports. I mean,
all the time.
Hockey's changed a lot.
It evolves so much. It's like the stock market. I mean, people catch on to something, and a good example in baseball is sabermetrics. I was just talking about this earlier today with some other people, that if you just did some very basic sabermetric things in baseball 5 years ago, you could blindly bet certain situations and win every year 30, 40, 50 units, no doubt about it. If you take those same principles today and apply them in today's betting markets in baseball, you barely break even. You might make a few units, but it's people catch on to things, they learn things, and you have to evolve. If you don't evolve, if you're standing still, you're going backwards.
So you're looking for the new stats that come out.
The new stuff.
See how relevant they are.
Just keep adding things to my model, tweaking things. I mean, you got to keep getting better. I mean, to keep up with everybody else, because you're going to get passed by eventually, and it's changing from year to year.
And it's because people caught onto it and the line got tougher based on it? Something pitching-wise rating or some kind of stat other than ERA and WHIP came along, and that was like, this is way more important than the others, and people don't quite know how important it is yet. Yeah,
it takes bookmakers and the betting markets, I think, a couple of years for that kind of stuff to sink in. You know, sabermetrics didn't come about overnight, but once they started becoming mainstream with Moneyball and those types of things, I think it just took people a few years to figure out how it applies to betting baseball. Once that got kind of figured out, people had to figure out new ways to attack it and incorporate more information and look at things a little different way. Now, some of those things that were allowing you to beat baseball 5 years ago, you can almost play against those now and make money because people are overcompensating for certain things.
We see something similar was in college basketball with the Pomeroy numbers. They were so good.
Absolutely, yep.
For so long. Now you almost have to bet against them.
That's a great point. Pomeroy, back in the day, 10 years ago when it was fresh, you can bet those numbers and make a ton of money. Now, yeah, you want to look for anti-Ken Pom angles, and you'll make money if you can find the right.
You mean at one time he's wrong is a situation that keeps coming up when he doesn't put in enough for a certain situation. So when he says the game is 10 and the line is 8, you're supposed to find a situation where you take 8?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it's 8, and usually it's something that maybe it's worth 4 points, but they only moved it 2 because Ken Pom says it should be 10. You know, they haven't compensated enough.
Do you have that? I don't want you to say it, but you have something in your head like that? You know what angle you would apply?
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that, I think, that you know, Ken Pom doesn't have, or in baseball, sabermetrics doesn't account for, because people go for the easiest, low-hanging fruit first, the easy stuff. And once that gets picked off, you've got to find the next line, you know, up above.
So other people would stop or just can't find the next line. Right,
and it's not easy, and it a lot of times takes a lot more effort, and people don't want to go, you know, to the next level to find it, or at some point, in some cases, it becomes too hard and too much time, and they don't want to put the time in, so we'll move on to another sport or another type of bet.
Baseball has the sabermetricians. Pro basketball has Hollinger's efficiency ratings or Pomeroy's college basketball efficiency numbers. What about football? Waz, what are you finding with these?
Can I ask you a question before we go on?
Yes.
I don't know the Hollinger name. Is he a gambler? Because I know Pomeroy's not.
Yeah, not a gambler. Neither are gamblers, Pomeroy or Hollinger.
Isn't that amazing that guys who influence the betting market so much are not part of it?
Yeah, Ken Pomeroy, I you know, he's a brilliant guy, obviously, with the Pomeroy ratings. He built a great algorithm, but I kind of feel like he's maybe the dumbest guy out there, because this guy would have kept to himself what he had over the years and just bet those games. He'd be a multimillionaire many times over by now, but he put out there for free and doesn't
Didn't somebody
gamble.
tell him these are great things for gambling when they started winning?
I think he's a weatherman or something.
Yeah, you're right.
And
but didn't somebody tell him you should bet these games? They're crushing. I'm crushing betting them. Did somebody send them $1,000 or something when they won $1 million?
Imagine if Billy Walters got a hold of him in the early 2000s. You know, and Billy.
Who's to say he didn't?
Yeah, the computer group, right? Back in the day, I mean, Billy was ahead of the market then.
Right.
And I think what Billy was doing was very similar to what Ken Pomeroy was doing with the games. They built something, a model or algorithm similar to rate teams. So maybe he thought, you know, this isn't really that proprietary and that great, but I mean, he could have took advantage for at least 3, 4, 5 years. And
well, he must have known
money.
The numbers were bad. Did he even know what the line was when he made it? He said this team should be 10-point favorite, and did he ever look to see they were only 3?
No,
I think, yeah.
I don't think so.
My impression is it works for the National Weather Service. My impression is he's above the gambling. You know, he that's beyond him. It's below him almost, where he's not it doesn't have an interest in it.
And he didn't even charge for the service until I think 2 years ago.
Unbelievable.
Like he was charging now, I think like $20 or $30, which is peanuts.
$19.95 for the year.
Yeah, and he could have been charging all along. Even for that, for the last 10 years, he could have made a bunch of money, and he could be charging $100, $200, $300 for that service. People would buy it.
No doubt. What about football, Waz? We were talking about advanced analytics in baseball and basketball. Where do you go for good football numbers? Who do you respect in terms of the math of football?
Brock
analysis?
Landers, I think he uses. Is that true?
By the way, Brock Landers, because we brought up that name, was raised in Calumet City, same as Brock Landers, and they both attended the University of Illinois. I believe that's where the comparison
Well,
started.
I think that you had a middle because it averages out. One guy wins a certain percentage, and one guy loses a certain percentage. So you put them both together, they become an average gambler.
Don't forget, John is also from Calumet City, so
He's about
There's three
average
of us.
anyway, so it keeps the average.
About 15 years older than Waz, too. Waz, your time on the in the south suburbs of Chicago, did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I did. We actually moved to Lansing when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. So I wasn't in Cal City my whole upbringing, but Lansing was a lot different than Calumet City, as you probably remember. But yeah, no, it was a good time. We moved to Indiana then when I was about 11 or 12. But yeah, it was good upbringing, Midwestern values. You know, it's a little different out here in Las Vegas, I feel like, than it was growing up in the Midwest. I don't even see kids outside playing anymore these days. Now, it's kind of everywhere, I think, with computers and video games and whatnot now. But it's kind of sad to not see kids outside or people barbecuing or people outside working in their garages. You don't see that in Las Vegas, where Midwest, everybody spends their time outside, and it's not the same in Las Vegas. So.
Are you a Chicago sports fan?
I am, yeah. I'm a big Blackhawks fan, Bulls fan, Bears fan, Cubs fan.
Does that affect your gambling opinions?
None, no. I don't let it affect. I actually bet against probably a lot of those teams more than I bet on them. But, you know, my knowledge level, I feel like on all the teams is about the same. I mean, even because I root for them, doesn't mean I spend more time reading about them or watching, you know, all their games. I follow them all, so.
If the Bears were in the Super Bowl and your number said bet against, would you pass and watch, or would you bet against?
I'd bet against, because win-win. I mean, the Bears are going to win, or I'm going to win money.
Okay, let's do it the other way. If your bets came out on the Bears, now you have a double loser, double winner situation. Would you bet less because you want them to win anyway?
No, I think I still make the same bet. I try to separate them entirely. I think I do a pretty good job of that with my betting. Maybe not before I moved here, maybe not so much, but now that I'm here and this is my profession, I feel like I have to.
Numbers guys in football. I know Jeff Sagarin, before Pomeroy came into prominence, a lot of people use the Sagarin ratings for college hoops. He also has college football.
Yeah, Sagarin used to be really big. Massey ratings were really big for a while. I like Pro Football Focus for NFL. They do a really good job of rating individual players, and you can quantify injuries really good with their information. They're not so big on the collective team so much, but NFL is a tough sport. I don't spend nearly as much time in NFL as I do in other sports, and the reason being, we talked about this at dinner a little bit, is, you know, I'll have more bets on a Saturday in college basketball than I will the entire NFL season. I only bet 4 or 5 games a week in NFL, and that's 70, 80 games the whole season. Even if you go 40 and 30 for the year, that's, 57%, which is an amazing season, 57%. That's 7 units of profit for the whole season of work. You know, and if I can make that in one day in college basketball, why spend all the time in football? So I spend very little time in the NFL. It's probably less than 10 hours a week, just enough to make some numbers on games.
Which is 8 hours more than most probably spend on it.
Well,
That
relatively
doesn't include
speaking,
watching games, right? That's separate. That's work. Working
finding good numbers.
Yeah.
It kind of includes everything, not just
Then
handicapping.
I spend more time than you because I'm a finding good numbers guy.
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time on it, and because I just don't think it's worth it. I hate to say that because it's the most popular bet sport, and people love it. But I mean, when you look at what you can make profit wise on it, it doesn't really make. It doesn't. You don't feel like the time is really worth it. The time you invest in it, you know, it's just the profit potential is not there. And I've done well in contests in the past, in NFL contests, because I think the equity is higher. You have a much higher ROI and chance to win, but just straight betting, I just don't see it there.
You told us you do better at the end of the season because you have more numbers to crunch.
Right. I do really well from like week 9, 10 on. I've done really well the last 3 or 4 years once I have a good data set. But it takes so long in football to get that data set together because it's only playing one game a week. Where in college basketball, I can get a good data set after like 1 month of the season. College football or NFL might take me 2-3 months.
How much more do you bet later in the year than at the beginning?
I probably have maybe 8 games a week towards the end.
And
where I only have 3 or 4.
Amounts on it,
a little bit
game.
higher. Yeah, definitely bet a little bit higher as I see my edge going up and more profit opportunities. I'll bet a little bit more for sure. Yeah.
You're in the Super Contest this year.
I am.
Do you care to reveal your handle?
It's WAZ.
WAZ, okay.
You can look back the last year. I've done well. I've done well. I've cashed the last 2 years in it. Last year I won the mini contest, which was the last 3 weeks of the season. I went 14-1 and split that with a couple of guys. And then 2 years ago I did really well. I got off to a slow start, but I finished really strong and ended up getting 6th place in the Super Contest, which was a nice score. And
the last 10 weeks, WAZ was 40-10 in the Super Contest, 80%.
Yeah. I started off really slow, and then the second half, I think I had the best record in the contest in the second half.
The guys you split the ending contest with, did you go over their place to see if they were doing something similar to you, or were they just different games?
I didn't even look, to be honest.
Not curious?
Not curious
Somebody
at all.
else is coming to the same conclusions as you?
No, I didn't even think of it, really, to be honest.
I would have looked. I think I would have looked to see, hey, maybe these guys are somebody who can put our heads together.
I'm sure I got extremely lucky. I don't remember all the games. I'm 14-1, so I probably didn't deserve that, obviously, and I probably...
Well, they probably didn't deserve it either, but
right.
I was just wondering if they were using some of the same analytics as you because they were coming up with the same games. Or were they, in football, you can come up with completely 5 different games and go 5-0. So it's an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Alan Dinkinson and WAZ, a pair of Las Vegas-based sports betting pros.
And wrestling fans.
In the studio at the KLAV AM 1230. Plenty of listeners tonight checked in at EOG.com. Love what James D. brings to the sports betting forum at EOG.com. You're going to hear more about James D. in the weeks to come. A generous guy, to be sure. Donald Sterling it is. He knows Donald Sterling. Does James
Did you
D.
ask him to come on the show?
I'm not sure if the invitation was sent or not. I'd love to have
do it on the air.
Yeah.
Come on to the show. He'd be a very interesting guest. He's informative. He understands gambling. He seems to have a sense of humor.
And a thick skin, too, which I appreciate, because it can be a rough world out there. In the internet.
Plus, he thought I was his enemy. He misunderstood who took shots at him and thought it was me, but that's not the case at all. I always respected him.
And I connect with the horse player in him. That's what I like about James D. I like a lot of...
he's a big player, I think.
He's a serious gambler. Shawnee Mack is going to be on the program tomorrow. He's listening tonight. Napoleon is listening. He says Dink and WAZ, 2 of his favorite guests. Parlay Now is listening tonight. Boys 911 asked to keep the wrestling talk to a minimum, and we did. And your friend, and my friend, too, 50 Cent.
Good man. Very nice guy.
And he, too, is a fellow horse player.
And a wrestling fan now. He came to the Ring of Honor show with me in the summer.
Chucky G is listening tonight as well. He posted at EOG.com that the Baltimore Orioles will be his team moving forward. He liked the way they celebrated tonight after clinching the American League East. We'll step aside and take the only...
Wait a minute. He liked the way they celebrated?
Yeah, he posted...
Is that a handicapping factor? They were dignified or something?
I think that was the fan in Chucky G talking. I'm not sure it's a
Were they more dignified than others, or were they wilder than others?
I think they were pretty wild. I want to say Adam Jones was really celebrating in a wild fashion, and Chucky G noted it. I'll get to the thread title.
I would think this is the other way around. This isn't the final step in the hurdle. So if you're going crazy about the first step, you might not be so anxious of your chances. You're concerned that you won't have another chance to celebrate, perhaps.
He said the fans were loving it in Baltimore. I can see that. I mean,
sure, it's been, I think, 23 years. I heard some 17
97 was the last time they won the division title.
17 years.
Yeah. You know who needs it is the Kansas City Royals. Longest playoff drought going, 28 years for the KC Royals.
George Brett.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the outside looking in right now. They're not in there right now.
Because they lost the game today after Detroit blew the game.
Right?
They just don't have enough power. I think this really kills them.
No, they don't hit the long ball.
And I wonder if the bullpen will hold up. I mean, it seems to hold up, but now I'm beginning to see a couple of chinks.
You know what's fascinating about this baseball season is the neighboring teams, the teams from the same metropolitan area are performing well. We mentioned at the top of the show the Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles, St. Louis Cardinals and Kansas City Royals,
Angels and Dodgers,
and then in the
Giants.
Bay Area, the Giants and A's. I mean, and
Yes.
there's
Mets and Yankees.
that's the oddball out. Cubs and Sox are also the odd team out.
Yeah,
But
anything with the Cubs, you're in trouble to begin with.
But what's interesting about those 4 metropolitan areas that house 2 baseball teams doing well is one from the National League, one from the American League. We could have World Series matchups potentially with the, wouldn't it be something if the Nats met the O's or the Cards met the Royals? In fact, that would be a rematch of the '85 World Series, the last time the Royals were there. Angels, Dodgers, and we've seen, of course, before the Giants and A's.
Yeah, there's a good chance it happens with all those teams in the playoffs that they all make it. Yeah, we could
I'm
see
not
it.
that high on either of the 2 teams that clinched today.
You don't like either.
Well, I mean, they're going to be, obviously in the second round. They're not going to have to be wild carded out. But I think both those teams have overachieved. And I hate the Washington bullpen of late. I think that's going to be a big Achilles heel for them in the series.
We'll step aside and take a quick timeout. We'll ask Waz what he thinks of Dink's comments about the Nats and the O's. Plus, we'll ask Waz about his baseball season. He's done fabulously well.
We
over the
want to
last
go to the
few months.
future, like games coming up instead of past. I think that's a much better way to handle the show. That's one of my big regrets of the show is we go over things and no one is learning when we go over things.
Okay.
That's why I'd rather promote my next wrestling card as opposed to go over the last one. But seriously, there's a lot of games coming up. Tomorrow's games, the series to talk about. It's not my show, but I'd rather talk about the future than go, I had a great we've established he's a great handicapper, so it comes to fruition that he had a great season. Let's go on and talk about what's coming up. And I totally believe it. There's not a doubt in my mind that everything he says is true, but it almost comes off as like, unless you're trying to sell something, we don't need to really go over it. Let's talk about something that might turn out a profit for the listeners.
We'll talk about the upcoming games next when we return here on the EOG Sports Hour.
There's no such thing as a sure thing, unless you're talking about Ion Gaming. Ion Gaming is a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If you're looking for smart, sophisticated sports handicapping information and insight,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the latest news on the ever-changing landscape of Nevada's race and sportsbook industry,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the most recent developments involving the worldwide sports betting scene with an emphasis on the leading sports books in San Jose, Costa Rica,
go to EOG.com.
And finally, if you're looking to join an online community of sports gamblers where registration is free and the information is priceless,
go to EOG.com.
You get the idea. Why gamble on other sports betting websites when Ion Gaming is a sure thing?
And I love a sure thing.
Hi, this is Rick Alec, president of Sports Options. Sports Options is a sports information tool designed to give sports bettors of all types the necessary edge needed to improve their bottom line. With Sports Options, you'll never lay a bad number again. We provide you with live odds from the leading sports books in the world, from Costa Rica to Curacao, London to Las Vegas, and everywhere in between. Sports Options also provides the fastest and most accurate injury information, lightning quick score updates, and game analysis from 30-year handicapping veteran Mark Simons. We offer affordable services for players of all levels, starting at just $99 per month. To see which service best fits your needs, you can take advantage of our 7-day free trial. No credit card is needed. Just go to www.sportsoptions.com and click on the free trial link. I'm confident you'll be impressed with our product, and you'll find it the most complete and comprehensive on the market. In fact, if you don't like Sports Options after 30 days, we'll refund you 100% of your subscription costs, no questions asked. Go to sportsoptions.com for all the details, or call 702-835-1743, and one of our friendly customer service representatives will be happy to help you. Sports Options, information you can bet on.
And we are back. The EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Tuesday night, joined by Alan Dinkinson and WAZ, looking ahead to future games. I see on the sports options screen right now both the Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles in action tomorrow. And WAZ, it was predictable the line moves tonight as money came against both the Nationals and the Orioles.
Yeah, I think if you're on that early enough, you could have probably predicted once those teams clinched, you're going to see at least a 10, 15 cent line move. Because they're going to be resting guys tomorrow. You'll probably see Bryce Harper get the day off, maybe Jason Worth, a couple other guys. So that was kind of a natural fit. I actually bet the Braves. I actually liked the Braves before the Nationals won, just from the matchup perspective of the pitching and how I rate the team. So I jumped on that, and then obviously it moved a little bit more. So definitely a good angle when you see a team clinched that you might like to look at possibly going the other way the next day. It doesn't always work. I don't think it's a blind bet kind of thing, but it's part of the process, I think.
Did you play either game under?
I did not, no.
Would it make sense to play it under? Or do you think they'll use their last call-up pitchers and
yeah, they could go either way.
People out that are kids and stuff.
They probably don't want to use up their best bullpen arms if they're going to play their, a lot of their bench guys. So, yeah,
the Atlanta-Washington total, by the way, depressed already, 6.5.
Oh, okay. Well,
and the Baltimore-Toronto total at Camden Yards is 8, under minus $1.15. About playing Atlanta, 3-11 their last 14 games. Are you afraid you might be playing a dead team?
No, I kind of like playing those teams. I like kind of buying when the stock's low and everybody, the whole world's against them now, saying they're terrible. They're not going to win another game the rest of the season. They've fallen apart. I think that's kind of in the line. I mean, that line on that game a month ago would have been probably 15, 20 cents higher for Atlanta based on the matchup and my numbers. So,
and that's with the lineup that Washington won't use.
Exactly. So I just liked it because I think you're kind of buying low and you're kind of selling high in Washington. I mean, Washington cannot be playing any better, and Atlanta can't really be playing any worse. So you kind of got the best of both worlds with this matchup, and nothing at stake for Washington. Atlanta still needs to win to get into a wild card spot. I know it's a long shot, but they still probably believe there's a chance they can get there. So I just thought it all kind of lined up perfectly for an Atlanta bet.
About the Orioles and Nationals' chances in the postseason, handicap those two teams for me.
Well, I haven't been a big Baltimore fan all year, but I have started to liken to them a little bit. I mean, they're one of those teams that when you look at them on paper, they just don't really look like much. But I think the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and I think they are a good team. I mean, they do the little things that win baseball games. They play good defense. They got a strong bullpen. They have a really good manager. I think they have kind of the intangibles that help you. I don't know how that translates into a postseason, however. I mean, they don't have the frontline starters. I mean, who are you going to rely on to win the big game? I don't like any of their starters, really. Chris Tillman, Wei Yin Chen, Gossman, Gonzalez. I mean, they're all nice pitchers, but none of them are going to dominate a game for you. And, yeah, you can throw in 5-6 innings and hope the bullpen holds up. But if you have to throw 4 or 5 guys out of the pen, you're probably going to get one guy to have a bad game if you're relying on that many arms each day out of the pen. So I don't really like them in a series against, a team like the A's or even the Tigers. I mean, that they have a little bit better starting pitching. But those teams have flaws as well. I mean, so I don't like Dale in general. I think is kind of a big wild card. I don't know there's really a favorite in the American League, so I think anybody can win it. National League's a little different story, I feel like, but the American League, I think, is kind of up for grabs.
And the Washington Nationals.
I like them a little more. I mean, they have holes, too. Their bullpen has had huge problems of late, and they've got some holes in the lineup as well, and guys haven't played up to their standards. So, but they have, they have a real nice pitching staff, obviously, and they have guys you can count on in the playoffs, I feel like, Zimmerman and Doug Fister, real reliable guys. Even Strasburg, I know he's been off and on a little bit, but I'd trust him in a playoff game much more than I'd trust any of the Orioles starters. So I do like their chances, but I like the Dodgers in the NL a lot more, just based on overall balance of the team and their rotation. I think's much better in a playoff series than it is in regular season when you throw off Kershaw and Greinke right off the bat. It doesn't matter who the third guy, whether it's Ryu or whoever else they end up using. I think it's going to be a nice 1-2 punch to give them a huge advantage right off the bat.
Quick correction was said about something that was said before the break. Royals are in the playoffs if the season ended today. 5 teams now in. They're at least in the play-in game. They're 2 up on Seattle, according to Hustle Double.
Okay.
So And that would be a good story, would it not? The 28 years without making the postseason. The Royals are an easy team to root for.
As a fan, I'd rather see Oakland out. First, they're coming in crippled. Second, they don't deserve it anymore. And I'd rather see Seattle and Kansas City be the... Well, I can live without Detroit either. So those are the teams. I'd rather not see Detroit and Oakland. I'd rather Seattle and Kansas City make it for interesting dynamic in the one-game playoffs for both of those teams. And, you know, the two underachieving teams, let's get rid of one of them.
It has been a fascinating baseball season. I mentioned before the break you're doing well, WAZ. Give me an example of where your edge comes from in betting baseball. What did you spot this year that maybe some others didn't, that now we know about this pitcher, this player, this team? I'll give you an example. The Cubs, I spotted a kid, Kyle Hendricks, before the market knew about Kyle Hendricks, and I've been riding Hendricks pretty hard. Give me your special note, the one secret you may have had that you made money on.
Well, there's lots of things. I think it's sort of a collection of, you know, I start off with a base math model that kind of gets me started, where I plug in a lot of advanced numbers and things I look at that kind of spits out a baseline number, and then from there I kind of adjust it based on some subjective factors. So I hate to say it's just one thing, but one thing I did notice this year as opposed to other years that maybe has helped me a little bit is that I think the bookmakers and the betting markets were a little bit shy about some of the favorites. I bet more favorites this year than I have underdogs, which is rare for me. Probably 60-40 or somewhere whereabouts, which is pretty big differential. Usually it's close to 50-50 or maybe 45-55 the other way. And I think that with the totals being low, I think they're afraid to put the favorites too high. So I'm not afraid. I'm not one of those people that says I won't bet anything over like minus 180 or I won't bet over minus 150. I'll bet based on value. And I think a lot of people make these rules on games where they won't bet a certain type of situation and they won't bet a certain line because it's too high. Won't take a plus 190 dog. Won't take a plus or minus 190 favorite. And I don't make any of those types of rules. Every game
you don't parlay two big favorites.
I don't parlay at all. I just look at each game individually, and I think this year, I think it's been kind of at least I know it's, if you look at the overall numbers, the favorites aren't really killing it, but just based on the way I've done it, I feel like some of the bigger favorites have had value more so than prior years.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Alan Dinkinson and WAZ. We're talking sports and sports betting. We'll ask WAZ what he's played tomorrow in Major League Baseball and ask him how the football season has treated him thus far. WAZ, have you made early plays in the MLB?
I bet that Atlanta game, which I mentioned a little earlier, and I also bet I bet a total as well. The Cleveland game. Houston-Cleveland, under 8.
Oberholzer and Carrasco. That game goes 5:10 Pacific time, under the total of 8, Houston and Cleveland. How's the football season treated you thus far? Let's start with the NFL. Weeks 1 and 2, have you won money?
No, I'm down a couple units in NFL overall. But I always kind of start out slow in football, college and pro. I always right around break even those first few weeks, and I think it's just more of a function of me not having that data to work with. I do preseason work and get ready for the season, but I'm not good enough to just rely on my opinion or the feel of how the team's going to come out in the beginning of the season. I feel like I need a couple of games worth of data, and a lot of times more than that, to really get a real true sense on how good a team is. So I kind of ease into it. I don't have a lot of plays those first few weeks. I just look for big edges, and I kind of sit back and wait a little bit smaller. And then once I have that data to work with, then I'll start hitting it a little harder.
I think in college, the market is pretty inefficient according to a lot of sharps, but they're basing it on expectations as opposed to reality. And now, after a couple of weeks, you're going to start mixing expectations with reality, and we'll see how much the market is off on those, like week 4 and 5 in college, where they should be a little closer. Than a lot of games moved 8 to 10 points already this year. And
there were some huge line moves in college football this week already. I mean, it's only Tuesday, and yesterday and today I saw some huge moves, and I mean that tells you right there. I think there's definitely an edge to be had, but it's just not my thing, I guess. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, you're kind of sad that you're sitting back and going, I moved from 7 to 11.5, and I didn't lay the 7.
Right.
Then I didn't lay the 7.5. Then I didn't lay the 8. And now I'm not going to take the 11.5 either. Yeah, it's like somewhere I goofed up here.
But I think a lot of those moves are wrong, though. I mean, it's so early, and the teams
they're
haven't
allowed
really
to be wrong, but they're also a little bit more likely to be right.
Oh, for sure.
How good was the money on TCU last week against Minnesota?
There was some real bad ones too last week, and I was on them against Duke and Kansas. I think some game I took 20 to win. It closed 11, and I don't know. I wasn't really that into the result. I was scoring the tickets and shaking my head when I got home from wrestling because I lost a bunch of late games where I had more the best of it than the early games, which I won. So I don't know what to say. Just for fun, I made 11 baseball bets for tomorrow, so I'm going to tell everybody what I bet. Mostly the original numbers, so you find out if the original numbers are there or not. I bet under in Colorado, Atlanta and under, Mets, Milwaukee plus 1.5, mainly because the Cardinal bullpen can blow any lead and get it down to 1. Tampa, Cleveland, Seattle, under in Oakland, which I think was my biggest play. Pittsburgh under and Toronto the side. I did not bet Toronto under.
Very well. So 11 games.
Just 11.
Yeah, still have a little
I
action.
fire in baseball because this is more juice, and I'm playing the first number, and I truly believe that, before these games all start, I have positive equity just because the games will move more than 5 or 6 cents. So let it go.
11 selections then from Dink. If you missed those plays, we'll have them at EOG.com late night tonight in a thread titled Dink's Action. Is that a lot of games for you, 11?
No, there'll be more tomorrow because games that do move that I didn't bet, I will play against. So I can have the whole board almost, because it's baseball. First of all, I'm not betting a lot. That's paramount. But usually the games move my way more than they don't, so I have positive equity, and that's all I kind of want is I can't predict the winners more than I'm better at predicting the line movement. I'd much rather have every winner than every line movement right. But in the long run, you have to win if you just take positive equity on a ton of bets. It's kind of like flipping a coin at plus 02.
What percentage of those games do you track? Do you track closely, or what percentage of games would you feel like you have the edge on at closing number, where you have equity?
Well, this is, some you have bigger equity than others, so percentage isn't fair.
Sure.
But I'd say in the high 50%, over the low 40% where I have break even, or, of course, 2 cents the worst of it, or I can still lay what I laid isn't the worst bet in the world. But I would say more games move 5 cents on my side than the number I got, which is already the best choice around at the time the line opens. Usually I wait till Pinnacle opens, and I'm betting Virgin Pinnacle lines when I know they're going to be a little off the Chris line, or if I see something really important, I'll bet it at Chris, but usually I wait out Pinnacle.
What about this time of year versus early on in the season? Do you see any differences in how you're beating the number, by more, by less, the same?
I think I'm beating it more now because I learned how the market will be. That's not always the best way to handicap. They're always on this, they're never on that, and this line seems way too high.
Yeah,
I know they're going to bet it down, or, a lot of totals go under, so I handpick the unders and wait for my overs to come at the end when every total moves a little down. By the way, there's a few totals that move up. If you just blindly bet them, I think you'd be winning. If you catch the number that didn't move.
The reason why I asked is because, for me, this time of year, August, September, I find myself going against a lot more moves than I do early on in the season. And I think it's more a function of probably me having the data and disagreeing with some of the conventional wisdom maybe on certain teams. But I'm not afraid to go against a 20, 30 cent line move, whereas in April and May, I'm very hesitant to bet a game that moves a lot because I feel like I either missed something or maybe my opinion's out of line. I don't have the data to support it, but now I have the data to support it, so I feel much more confident in going against a market move. I think the market's wrong a lot this time of year, and I think part of it's because football's here, people are focusing on that, and they're getting away from baseball, and then the teams themselves, they change so much this time of year from how they were earlier on in the season. They're not the same team because they're out of the race, they're playing younger guys, or or they're on the other end of the spectrum where they're highly motivated, they need to win, and they're playing like a playoff game every day, so they're playing all their best relievers, and the other team they're playing against is playing their B lineup, and there's just different factors that you don't usually see. So I think the market
they've
doesn't
overused their relievers too because
Sure.
they got to use them every day.
So I think but I feel like people aren't paying as much attention to that as they should, because they're more focused on either football or the season's wore them down by now. It's a long grind.
Yeah, I think it's
Baseball.
more of that than football because there is no football tomorrow and one game Thursday. So I don't know if they're just handicapping football and ignoring baseball. I think that most people lose after a long season or throw in the towel or don't want to do September because it's a little bit different than the other months. Mm-hmm. How much do you emphasize teams that have to win against teams that want to see their double A guy pitched against Major League hitting, and it might be pitching against a Major League lineup that is all stacked because that team needs to continue to play.
But the thing about it is, in my head at least, I think the edges you find in September baseball are much bigger than the edges you're going to find in the first month in football. So I'm still spending all my time, or a lot of my time, on baseball because if you put the work in this time of year in baseball, you can really score big. Whereas first month of football, you can make money too, but there's so many unknown variables this time of year where you're kind of guessing a lot more than you are in baseball this time of year. So, and
you can see in college football what the predictive ratings were and how these teams play. There's a tremendous gaps, and not only due to injury, which there's a lot of injuries, but due to just incorrectly reading the number of starters returning and things.
Vanderbilt's a good example.
No, I think everybody knew Vanderbilt was going to be bad, but nobody knew they'd be this bad. Nope. Vanderbilt was one of those teams that everybody pegged for a bad season. The total opened 6 flat and closed 6 under 80. And that one was a known one. Nobody knew they'd be this. That's impossibly bad, but they're terrible. It's going to change. Things change. There's no way you can start betting against Vanderbilt now because that's the common perception of them. Now you have to decide if it's worth betting on them. It's the only way you can go with a team that everybody knows is horrific and has been horrific and was supposed to be horrific. It's time to bail that opinion off.
Less than 10 minutes remaining in the program. We want to get Dink's quick look at the upcoming NHL season. Boucher, an EOG contributor, asked Dink to talk a little hockey tonight. He says that EOG contributor Noog made a thread in the main forum about some Pinnacle propositions that are available. Dink, are you getting ready for your hockey season?
I'm reading, and I'm enjoying what I'm reading, but I don't believe the first week of hockey is. People, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup? Oh, God, I didn't know who was going to win the Stanley Cup when they started the Stanley Cup. I had no idea. It's very hard to, get in of all the sports. We just talked about getting college wrong. NHL is such a chemistry sport, and they're going to be shuffling lines throughout the month of September to see who gets it right. And if they lose 2 games in a row, they're going to change every single line and every single defensive pairing because they lost 2 games in a row. And then you have to adjust with that sport more than any other sport. It's a terrible sport to have preconceived, San Jose is going to be bad this year, or Detroit. I mean, Detroit figures to be better because they were so injured. You can look at that, but they can come out and be very flat. My sleeper player is Nyquist. I love this kid on Detroit. He's so good. Gustav Nyquist. Unbelievable future star, I think. He's already a star, but nobody knows who he is. He is phenomenal.
What's he worth on the line?
I don't know. 7 cents, maybe? For a guy who nobody knows about, but he seems to play a lot. He doesn't miss too many games. Mm-hmm. He's in my hockey pool. I get him. If he's projected to go in the 4th round, I want him in the 2nd. And I definitely want him on my team. I think that team will be better. Projecting goalies is always ridiculous, so that's another thing.
Are you going to do anything differently this year in hockey that you didn't do last year?
Yeah, win, I hope. I don't know.
Add any new wrinkles into your handicapping approach, or anything you maybe thought about to incorporate?
Where I went wrong, I like to bet. I think I really want to. It's hard when the dime at Pinnacle comes up for regulation, and I'm more of a dime better. But so sometimes I bet before regulation lines are available, and I'm done with my bet and go, I should have lowered that bet and then waited for regulation, or took a shot that the regulation line will come out without me losing the full game line because this team is a better regulation team. I mean, any time the Devils went into overtime and I still had a bet on them, it was just awful. I mean, there's some amazing stuff with the shootout. Anybody who thinks this is random is out of their minds. It's more predictable than any other sport. If I could bet the shootout pick 'em, well, it's hard to say because sometimes you have Kershaw against a bad pitcher. But if I could bet the shootout pick 'em or the hockey game itself pick 'em, I would do way better with the shootout.
Less than 5 minutes remaining in the program. We've talked sports and sports betting on tonight's show. Hope you enjoyed it. We got plenty of selections as well. Waz gave us a couple of baseball plays. Dink gave us 11 MLB games.
I'm like Looker, I think. Looker in exhibition football.
The math modeler Looker, who will be on the program the first Tuesday in October when he goes head-to-head
he's got no
against
shot.
Dink.
Try to get me someone better.
The second week in October, we do have a star handicapper, someone whose opinion I respect, Generous Jay.
Big wrestling fan.
Yes, and well-heeled gambler, too. He's not shy when he steps to the
I'm not
betting
saying
room.
the same thing I just said about Looker. About him.
Jay's good, and he enjoys your time on the program here, Dink. And Waz, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you about this coming weekend's football action.
I wanted Waz to do a Tuesday contest with me.
Me and you squaring off?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could take you on, Dink.
Well, then why not?
Tough opponent.
You want odds or something?
Yeah, give me some odds.
No shot. No shot. I think that would be fun.
Plus 180 works for
Maybe
me.
we'll do it for like a small charitable donation to a charity's choice to lose it. Puts a couple $100 into a charity.
All right, we'll see what we can work out.
How is Caroline Betts, by the way?
Well, we had a scare about a horse today, but the horse turned out to be a bit of a false alarm and seems to be much better than we hoped. So, it seems to be completely out of the woods, according to a text I got from Caroline when the show started. So that's good news.
Dink has been so good to the charity, and Caroline's so good to him. They're good friends. sctbrescue.org is Caroline's
Not so
website.
good to me, but I'm good to the charity.
And EOG contributors have been good to Caroline as well.
Very good. That's
I think
important. That's
two win, two
really
plays, two show.
A lot of people who've come out as curmudgeonly on the forum have really been kind to the charity.
So we thank them for that. Waz, before we go, a bet that you made on for a Saturday game, and maybe a bet that you made on a Sunday game. Anything that stands out to you?
I'll give you a 2 for Sunday. It's because they're on top of my head right now. I took Washington. I got 7. I know it's down to 6.5 most places now, but I like Cousins at quarterback a lot more than RG3. I think that's an upgrade there. Philly coming off 2 big comeback wins. I think they might be a little bit flat here in week 3. The other one I made is Pittsburgh.
By the way, you can get Washington plus 7 minus $1.20 at Coast right now.
Yeah, I would take that. And then Pittsburgh against Carolina, getting plus 3.5. I took that. I'm not a big believer in Carolina yet. They need to show me a little bit more. And Pittsburgh, I think, is much better than what we've seen so far. So I like Pittsburgh plus 3.5.
So 2 underdog plays for Waz week 3.
Do you bet more underdogs in the NFL?
I do in the NFL. And underdogs so far in the NFL have been cleaning up. I don't know the exact numbers, but they're hitting over 60% for sure first 2 weeks. So for what that's worth, I think that'll probably continue a little bit longer until we see some adjustments. But, more dogs than favorites for sure.
So the 2 plays from Waz, Washington plus 7 minus $1.20, Pittsburgh plus 3.5. We'll see how those fare and report back next week on Waz's results. Waz, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. I know you've got a busy day. Give us a day in the life of Waz. What do you do tomorrow for your sports handicapping?
Oh, gosh. Every day is a little bit different, I guess, but I get up pretty early. I'm up at like 6 a.m. usually starting, and I'm getting up one day ahead usually. So I'm handicapping the next day's card and do a lot of reading in the morning and recapping what happened the day before and looking at some box scores, reading some beat writers, Twitter.
How much time is spent making actual bets? Do you go out on the street? Do you have a team?
Oh, yeah. I'm on the street, online. I mean, a couple hours a day.
You're a solo street goer now.
Oh, yeah. I'm solo. I mean, I'm solo operation, so I'm out doing my own thing and a couple hours doing bets and the rest of the day crunching numbers and reading. I mean, it's a lot of what it is.
I wake up at 9 and read some wrestling websites, and then I get a snack and play with my dog. And that's why
Get a massage.
That's why I get a massage and go to the chiropractor. That's why one of us does a lot better than the other.
That'll wrap up our fast-moving show. For Alan Dingleton, for Waz, I'm John Kelly. Thanks for listening to the EOG Sports Hour. Our conversation continues at EOG.com.
Good luck.